Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. My name is Diana Skaya. U.S. President Donald Trump has sparked controversy after posting an AI-generated image portraying himself as a Christ-like figure, an image that quickly triggered backlash not just from his critics, but from his own conservative and Christian supporters. The reaction was unusually strong, with some calling it offensive, others questioning his judgment, and many stating that this crossed yet another line. Now, to unpack what this means politically, culturally, and globally, I'm joined now by Marcin Bużański, Director at the Center for Diplomacy and Negotiation at Collegium Civitas. Marcin, so glad to have you here with us from our Brussels bureau. Marcin, I'm going to invite you first.
Hello, pleasure.
Let's just look at this AI-generated image that Trump posted. I mean, what do you think about this? I mean, honestly, less than a year after signing legislation, right, expected to strip nearly 12 million Americans of health insurance by cutting Medicaid, Trump posts this picture, right, where he's portraying himself as Christ-like figure, healing the sick. How do you reconcile this contradiction? I mean, is this actually appropriate for a sitting president to share this kind of AI-generated religious imagery?
I think it's absolutely inappropriate. I think it's in bad taste. But I also am quite aware that this is not the first time that Donald Trump is shocking the world with the type of images that he's posting. Let us remember the images on bombing Gaza, on bombing Iran. Let us remember the images when he's on beaches with billionaires and many others. So this is not new that he's shocking, that he's playing with controversy. I think he believes that any kind of thing, any kind of messaging that's going to bring traffic is good. But at the same time, as you pointed out, this crosses a certain line because for many Christians, especially for Catholics, this looks as clearly as blasphemy, putting himself in the position of Jesus Christ, in the position of God. And of course, we have to underline this is part of a message in his exchange, if we can call it this way, with the Pope, with the Holy Father, who's obviously the head of the Catholic Church. And his messaging is also, I think, unprecedented in terms of language used directly by a foreign leader towards a Pope. And let's
Marcin, I'm just going to interrupt you.
Pope Leo is American.
I'm just going to interrupt you right there. Let's actually listen to that heated exchange for a moment.
We don't like a pope that's going to say that it's okay to have a nuclear weapon. We don't want a pope that says crime is okay in our cities. I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo. He's a very liberal person, and he's a man that doesn't believe in stopping crime.
I have no fear of neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel. And that's what I believe. I am called to do what the church is called to do. We're not politicians. We're not looking to make foreign policy, as he calls it, with the same perspective that he might understand it. But I do believe that the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers, is a message that the world needs to hear today.
All right, Marcin, I mean, moving on now, we just heard that, right, that tit for tat there. How do you interpret this framing of a religious leader in partisan political terms? I mean,
well, the Pope clearly has stated he doesn't want to engage further in this kind of exchange and that he doesn't see himself as a political leader. He underlined that his messaging towards the war is constant and common with the writing of the Bible and the messaging of the Church, which is to seek peace as quickly as possible and look for peaceful resolution to conflicts. I think he was particularly referring to the previous message from President President Trump, where he threatened to wipe out a whole civilization, which has been interpreted as a threat of genocide. And this is, of course, clear that the head of the church will have a certain response to that this kind of language shouldn't be allowed and used by leaders around the world. So I think considering this statement by the Pope, that's why we've seen Donald Trump a reaction. But I also feel that it is a sign of things not going Donald Trump's way when it comes to the war. It is a sign of him losing political backing when it comes to the war. So I think there was a certain frustration with Donald Trump that we can see through his messaging. But all in all, this is truly unprecedented when it comes to addressing a leader of the church. I don't think it'll be in Donald Trump's interests to continue this line. I think this will only really disengage more and more of his political base within the MAGA movement and within more broadly Christians and Catholics among Republicans.
Marcin, let me ask you, how significant is the Pope's influence in being able to shape global moral discourse compared to political leaders like Donald Trump?
Well, it really depends on country to country. We've seen a decreasing influence of the Pope when it comes to messaging in Western Europe, when it comes to messaging in the US as well. But when it comes to Africa, when it comes to Asia, the role of the Catholic Church has been growing, the backing for the Church has been growing. So his voice still resonates and is heard and is important. And also the Church is a major global organization, and it does get involved in many different conflicts and disputes as a mediator, sometimes a very silent one, sometimes passing on messages. It has that kind of history. Of course, the Pope also, different popes had different political roles. Just to mention the Polish Pope, who had an enormous role in the downfall of the communism, as we know, John Paul II. The previous Pope had on one hand a strong role in a number of conflicts, but also had a very controversial role when it comes to Ukraine and when it comes to Russian invasion. I'm thinking about Pope Francis here. So when it comes to Pope Leo, his probably finding his ground and his responses now will probably define how he moves on forward as the Pope and to what extent he'll be expressing different type of messaging that could be seen as political, but is really about following the word of the Church. And I think another important thing to underline here, a lot of the European leaders have already backed the messaging of the Pope here, especially in Italy. Giorgia Meloni, who's been seen as the strongest supporter for Trump in Europe, has come out very strongly in defense of the Church, as did her foreign minister Tajani. But also these were other leaders across in Europe. So I also think that in that sense, on this sort of, let's say, dispute, the Pope will only have his followership, his following increase, and it will be more harmful for Donald Trump.
And all this with the midterms slowly approaching. Marcin, let me ask you, do you think that Donald Trump is somehow testing his limits of what he can or cannot get away with? And what do you think, in a case like this, should there be, and what kind of consequences should there be for leaders like this?
Well, I think he's been testing those limits constantly, and especially in a very politically charged situation like we have right now with the war in Iran, and with a really stalemate situation because there's no good solution for Donald Trump politically. You can see some frustrations coming out. There are clearly attempts to change narratives, but these changes of narratives, which have worked previously, if done almost on daily basis, they stop being effective as political tools and start showing a picture of a leader, who's clearly not in charge, or at least not fully understanding the impact of what he's doing. Because Americans hurt at the oil pump stations. They have a possibility of inflation coming up, which is going to hurt the whole of economy, and that's what Americans really matter the most for Americans when it comes to midterm elections. So if we look at all of this, this is not a good symptom. It's not a good progression when it comes to the electoral position of Republicans, and it is to be seen if there will be cracks among his support base in the Congress, where a lot of the Republicans will see, well, this is a risk for us not getting our seats in the midterms.
Thank you so much, Marcin Bużański, Director at the Center for Diplomacy and Negotiation at Collegium Civitas, for breaking it down for us here on World Talks.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching this episode of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Stay tuned for us here for more interviews and exclusive insights.